Hey guys, SleeveShirtholes here, and welcome to video 2 of the YouTube series where we're building my portfolio site. Today we'll be focusing on adding BetterAuth to our application, so we'll go through the documentation on how to do that into our Tanstack application, and then we will set up Google and GitHub as our SSO partners. So there's going to be a lot of information in this. I decided I wanted to just do one video just focusing on BetterAuth because there's just a lot of information, and sometimes this is the difficult piece of getting authentication set up. So I look forward to going through this with you, and I hope you enjoy, and let's get started. All right, guys, here's our project from the last time that we left off. We've got Tanstack Start set up. We also got Prisma set up to interact with the database. And we also got some of the styling stuff set up as well. So this is a continuation from the last video. So let's go ahead and start with getting BetterAuth set up. So I'm just going to clear this. We're going to start out with going to their documentation. Excuse me. All right, so I just went to BetterAuth, their site, and I just went to getting started. And we're just going to step through each of these to get it set up. So let's go ahead and copy this command here. We got npm install. This is going to install the package to our project. And actually, sorry, before we do that, let's actually make sure we pull anything down. Do we have any changes? It's always important, and I'm just getting to this now, but it's always important to make sure that you're making branches and committing on branches rather than the main branch. So let me just do that real quick. Add modified some Prisma config, push that up, and then we're going to create a new branch, and we're going to call this adding BetterAuth. I'm just going to name it that. And we're going to publish that, make sure that's all hunky-dory. Sweet. Okay. Always important, make sure that you're not committing on the main branch. It's always great to split out your branches depending on the feature, so that way if you need to work on another branch, you don't use the work that you've done on this branch and like get everything merged, and it's going to mess things up, and you might release something that you don't mean to. And so it's just really important that you use branches whenever you're doing some new work and some new features. So enough of talking about GitHub. So we're going to run this command here, npm install BetterAuth. So that's going to set up our package. Take a minute while that's happening. Let's go back over. Sorry, back over here. And we're going to set our environment variables next. So obviously we have an environment file here with our database URL that we added in on the last video. And so now we're going to add our BetterAuth secret. What's really cool about this is we can generate one here. Obviously, I'm going to change that before I deploy. And anytime you have secrets like this, you have secrets like this, you always want to make sure that you don't have it hard-coded in your code. Let's go ahead and save that. So we've got that added. Then we're going to set our base URL as well. For now, we're just going to set it to localhost 33,000, but when we deploy this, obviously that will be our domain name. But for now, since we're just doing local development, we're just going to do localhost. Then we need to create we need to create the auth file that we're going to be using. And it tells you can do it in either of these, but I personally like doing it in the lib folder just so it's separate from everything else and it's easier to find and know where to manage that at. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do it in the source folder just so, oh, and look, we actually already have it there. So perfect. So we're going to do it in this folder and we're going to call it auth.ts. We're going to add this into the file. And so this is setting up the BetterAuth extension from the BetterAuth package. And we're going to be adding some stuff in here, obviously, to configure what SSO providers we want. If you want to do like email and password, that would go here. We're also going to set up our database adapter for connecting to our database using Prisma. So that's where all this information will go. So for now, we're just doing comments and nothing in the BetterAuth, but we will add those here shortly. So then the next is configuring the database. So you can connect it directly to any of these databases that you want. But since we're using Prisma as our ORM, we have a way to do that as well. And it's just, since we're using Prisma, it's easier to connect to Prisma using with BetterAuth so that Prisma can handle the connection to the database, the queries, all that fun stuff. So we're going to use that instead. So basically, we're just copying this entire thing here and replacing it with what's in this file. And now we need to create the database tables. Database here. Okay. We have Sleeves portfolio here, tables. We currently don't have any tables in here. So this next step is going to allow us to create the tables necessary for BetterAuth to work. So we have like a user table and an account table, some other tables as well that we can look at once we do this. What's really nice about BetterAuth is they just have this CLI command here that will generate everything for you. So this first command here will generate the schema and the migration file for you. And then the next command is what we'll use to go ahead and actually put the tables in the database. So first step is to run this will create the schema that we need and the migration file. So let's run that. We're going to say yes to this, and that's going to allow us to generate the schema and the migration file. So while that's running, let's go over here. Let's just wait for it to finish. Okay, so now we have an error here. And read your auth, cannot find module Prisma client. So this error that we were getting before is what's causing the issue. All right, guys, so now that we resolved the issue, I'm going to just go through kind of what I ran into. Somehow from the last video, either we skipped a step or you missed some setup or something, or I lost the code because it's really weird that it wasn't working the way, or the code wasn't there. So I'm just going to go through what I ended up doing because we got that error. So I got rid of the Prisma client from here and added a database file, which basically this file is so that you can use Prisma throughout your application and be able to do queries off the database, that sort of thing. And so this handles connecting to the database, creating a Prisma client that you would then use to query the database throughout your application. And then we're just exporting that Prisma client that we're going to use throughout the application for interacting with the database. So once we got this file set up, I also, just to be safe, since some stuff got missed, I went ahead and I ran this command as well, just to make sure all the packages were there and that we didn't have any issues with that. So I ran that as well just to be safe. And then in the auth where we were working before we encountered this error, I got rid of that Prisma client because we don't need to define a new Prisma client. We want to use what's already defined in this database. Since we're already defining it that way, this is a global way of defining it to be able to use it everywhere. We pass that into the BetterAuth Prisma adapter, and we provide it with a PostgreSQL provider. So this allows BetterAuth to connect to the Prisma database using Prisma. And then the last thing that I added to make our life a lot easier is I added these two scripts here. So those are the two things we added there. So let's continue forward. So let me go back. We've got that set up. So that's good here. So once again, we didn't need this because this is just defining a new Prisma client. And since we're doing it in that database file, we don't need that. So once again, it's always important not to just blindly copy and paste things in. You want to make sure that you're looking at it correctly and making sure you're only copying and pasting what you actually need. So got that all taken care of. Now, the next step is to create database tables. So we're going to copy this command, and this is going to generate our schema file and our migrations. So let's go ahead and run that. This is where we had issues last time where it wouldn't do that. Do you want to overwrite the schema file? Yes, I do, because I don't have anything in there. That's great. So let's go ahead and look what it did. So left all this the same, which is great, as you can tell. And it went ahead and added a user model, a session model, an account model, and a verification model. So these are each of the tables that BetterAuth needs to be able to operate and actually control authentication. So let's just kind of break down some of the stuff in these models. So this is how a Prisma schema file is set up. You only have one schema file per application. So anytime you need to add new tables, you would come in, you would add them into here. And then this is how they're defined. You have a column name, you have the type. So you got string, Boolean, date, time, anything like that. And then you have identifiers. So like this ID here, we're going to mark it as ID. And so now Prisma knows that this is the primary key. And we're going to generate, and it's going to generate IDs for us automatically, which is great. Then we have the name column here that's just a string, an email column that's a string. We have an email verified. Some methods you can send an email to the email that they provide. They click on the verify my email in the email, and then we have logic that then handles that and then updates this to true. I think with SSO, we'll see how it comes out, but I think in SSO we don't use this, or it just automatically defaults to true, or it changes it to true when somebody signs in. The default is set to false, so that's how you can set defaults on your columns, is by using this default keyword and then passing in true or false, or if it's a different type, you can do other types as well. Then you have the image here with a string. This question mark here tells Prisma that it's an optional field, that you don't actually have to have an image. It's just optional. And then create at date time, we're setting a default, and we're going to have it set as now. So once a user row gets added in at that time, it's going to automatically grab the timestamp and put it into the database for us, so that we don't have to manage that ourselves. We have an updated at date time column type, and then this updated at is Prisma's keyword to be able to, anytime this row is updated, using Prisma client, of course, it will automatically add a date timestamp into that column for us. And then these here are relationship types. So if we come down, we can see that in session here, we have a user ID. And then down here, we have a relationship definition, and we're saying user. So this is just a string column. Then we're saying we want this user ID column to be tied to the user table. And that the way that we define that is here. We call this user. We just give that any name we want. So you could name this something else if you want. We define the class, the model name that we're going to use. And then we use this keyword and we say at relation. We tell which fields we're going to do. You can do more than one field if you need to. In this case, we're just doing user ID. And then this references will tell Prisma, okay, in this user table, for this user ID column we have in the session table, what column are we referencing in the user table? And in our case, that's the ID column. So if we come up here, we can see that that's the ID column there. And then on delete basically just tells it, okay, if a row in this session table gets deleted, what happens, right? Or if the row in the user table gets deleted, what happens to the data here? Because if I try to delete something out of this table, and there's data, let's say I try to delete a user in this table, but they have rows in here, it won't let you do that because it needs that other row because it's referencing it. Excuse me. So That's what that on delete handles is. Hey, if I delete a row in the user table, make sure you delete all corresponding rows for that user in the session table. So that's just a little bit of an overview of how the Prisma models and columns work. As we continue, building out this application, we can talk about it more, but I just kind of wanted to give an overview since we just added these here as part of our BetterAuth setup. So now we're good there. So we've confirmed that. All right, now we've got our schema set up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run this command. I'm actually going to run the command that I set up in my package.json because that's the reason I put it there. And so the one that we're going to do is this Prisma migrate here. So the way that we do that, I'm going to clear this just so we don't have so much stuff. All right, so now we're going to run our migrate function, which is going to update our database to make sure it's in sync with our schema file. So we're going to do npm run Prisma migrate. That's going to, let's see what that does. So it's running. We're going to enter a name for our new migration. Initial, oops, we should spell correctly, initial table setup for auth. And now our database is now synced with our schema. It created a migration file here for us with migration SQL. So if we go look at that, we can see what that looks like. So we can see it's creating the user, it's creating the session, it's creating the account, the verification table, all the indexes that we need. And if we go and look at our database now, we should now be able to see that there are tables here. Voila. So now we got our tables all set up and we're in sync with our application. And so now the next step is going to be authentication methods. So you can choose whatever authentication methods you want, but what we're going to use is Google and GitHub. So we need to go to the auth file here. We're going to just copy this here. We're not going to do email and password because I don't want to do that. We're going to close this. I'm going to close this. We're going to close this. We're good there. We're going to close this. And then we're going to add it here. And so basically what this is saying is I want to set up social providers. I'm going to use GitHub. And then for GitHub to work, we need a client ID and a client secret. We're going to get that information as well. So that way we can act, because we're going to actually have to set these environment variables for it to work. Okay, so we've added this information to our file. I'm also going to go to the Google tab here because I want to add Google as well. And we're going to skip this first step real quick because I just want to grab this information. So we're going to copy this. We're going to also add that to our config file. Let it autocorrect. Now, what we need to do is we need to go through and get the client ID and client secret for both GitHub and Google. So if we go back to the documentation, that first step that I just skipped over, it's going to walk us through on how to do that. So we're going to open the Google Cloud console. We're going to go to credentials. And then we're going to create credentials, and we're going to do OAuth client ID. And we're just going to say this is a web application. We're going to name this Sleeves Portfolio. We're going to add http//localhost 3000. And then as the URI, we need to add this right here as the redirect URL, because that's what we're going to use to redirect. Oops. And then this is for development, so in production we'll need to set that as well. So we're good there. And we're going to create. Let's focus on the oh, typos. See, I guess it's not a typo. I just didn't copy the H. That happens. So now we're going to copy our client ID here. And we're going to go over here. I'm going to open my environment file to the side just so I can see both of them. And then I'm going to enter it here. We're going to do Google client ID. Paste it. The client secret. We're going to paste that as well. Okay, so we got that in there. That's all hunky-dory. We're going to click OK. And now that's set up. Now we're going to go and do the same for GitHub. So we're going to go to Developer Portal. Do a new OAuth app. We're going to name it Sleeves. Oops. Sleeves Portfolio. HTTP//localhost 3000. Sleeves Portfolio. Okay, and then the callback URL we're going to use is this right here. We're going to make sure we copy the H this time. Okay. Oops. Paste it there. And then I'm going to click this. I guess you can leave it unclicked, but this basically allows them to authorize via the device flow they have, but I'm not too worried about that. We're going to grab the client ID here. Client ID, boom. And then generate a new client secret. Confirm. And then we're going to copy this client secret. And paste that there as well. Okay. One thing I would recommend checking real quick is just make sure that the names are the same. I've had issues in the past where I've done this, and I spend a lot of time like trying to figure out what's going on, and then I find out it's like a wrong naming convention. So Google client ID, Google client secret, GitHub client ID, GitHub client secret. Perfect. That's all right. So we're good. We're going to close that. We're going to open the File Explorer again. Back here. You've already configured the provider. Now we're going to close this as well. You've already configured the provider. Set your base URL, which we did that already. All right, guys. Now that we've got that all set up, we're going to go ahead and mount the handler. So we need to be able to have the application handle the request that we get from Google and GitHub when the user does sign in. So we are using Tanstack route. And so we're going to copy this. And as you can tell, it tells you where exactly it needs to go. And so we're going to close this now. We're going to go source, minimize that, routes. It's going to go to API. So we're going to create a new folder called API. API. New folder auth. And then the $sign. And we'll talk more about the path stuff in a different video. For now, we're just going to do this. So right now, this is showing an error, but that's because the route tree for Tanstack has not been updated yet, and so it doesn't see that. And so once we run npm run dev, Tanstack will regenerate the auth tree, and then this should update, so that way we don't have an error. As you see, it's gone now. And the route tree that I'm talking about here is right here. Basically, this is a file that you don't mess with, and this is automatically generated by Tanstack Start to keep track of all the routes and be able to, for you to be able to have IntelliSense and all that fun stuff. And so we can see that it's added some auth API auth routes right there as well. So don't ever edit that file, just let that be. So we've got that created. So basically what this does is this is a server. We're creating a file route at API auth. So this $sign is basically going to handle any requests that come from come to API auth / whatever is going to be handled by this file. And so there's a get request, and that's basically just getting authentication information, and then there's a post. So it's going to create like the rows in the user table and all those tables that we just created. That's what's going to handle that is that post. You can see that we're using this auth.handler request. This is BetterAuth's internal functions that will handle all of the stuff that we need to for creating a user, creating sessions, all that fun stuff. So now that we've got that set up, we're going to come down here. There's a little warning here that says when you call functions that need to set cookies like sign in email or sign up email, you'll need to handle cookie setting for Tanstack start. BetterAuth provides a Tanstack start cookies plugin to automatically handle this for you. So we need to add that as well. So we're going to copy this, just this little bit here. We're going to go back to our libauth file, libauth, and then we're going to, I believe that goes in just into the BetterAuth. And then we're going to put a comma, and we're going to let Windsurf do that for us. Let's just make sure we're getting the right import. And save that. So now that it's going to use Tanstack start cookie system rather than its own system for tracking cookies. The next step is creating client instance. The client side layout. This basically allows you to interact with BetterAuth in your client components, and so instead of it being on a server component, we're going to use it on the client components as well. So we want to set this up. So we're using React. We're going to copy this, and we're going to put this in the lib file as well. And we're going to do new file, and we're going to do auth/client.ts. Copy that down, save it. We're just going to keep this base URL the same. That's what we're using. And this just says you can export the specific methods if you want. I do like to do that just because I think it's cleaner. So we're going to do that. So we can get these sign in, sign up, use sessions specifically instead of having to do. So if I didn't do this export, then we would have to do auth client dot sign in, auth client dot sign up, auth client dot use session, so on and so forth. So I like to just be able to call those without having to do that. And that's it. So now it says we're using BetterAuth. We'll go ahead and go over the basic usage here. So that way we can now use BetterAuth to sign in. So now what we need to do is create a sign in page. So let's go ahead and collapse all this, collapse this. We're going to come here, and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this log or sign in.tsx. Export default function sign in. And then we're going to we're actually going to have Windsurf do this for us because that's what I like to do. I feel like it's more productive. I could sit here and add buttons and whatever, but this is the power of AI. Use the AI for things like this. What I typically like to do is I like to focus on like the nitty gritty stuff where I'm like interacting with the database, or if there's logic that's really complex, that's what I like to focus on. And then I like to use Windsurf or use AI to come up with generic layouts, and then I'll, ask it to tweak things here and there. So let's do this. We're going to say, please update this component to have a Google and GitHub sign in buttons. use the logos from Google and GitHub. I want this to be centered on the page in a shad cn UI card. I'll add on the button click logic myself. Just gotta spell it right, myself. And then the more specific you are, the better. I'm going to start with this generic statement and just see what it does. So now it's going to go through. Actually, I do need to switch. Sorry, code. Come here and code, and basically I had it set on ask, and so I'm just asking it to do it. But it's like, hey, I can't do it. So you gonna let me do it or what? And so now I switched it over to code. It's going to go through and it's going to create the sign-in page for us. Why that's happening. So let's pull up the site here because I don't think I have it pulled up yet. I believe we just have a generic page. It says hello or something like that, or Sleeves portfolio there. So update the sign-in. I'm going to accept these. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this sign-in on our index page. And so if we come back here, we've got our sign-in page there. Obviously, I'm not going to keep this on the home page. I'm just doing this for this tutorial so you can see how that works. But it's pretty good sign-in page, and I'll probably use this. It just won't be on the main page, obviously. And so let me go back over here because I'm guessing they did not do the on-click. And then here, what we'll do is if we go back over here to Google, we're going to scroll up, and it's going to be the auth client .sign-in social. This right here is what we want. Okay, so we're going to do auth client .sign-in social, and we need to do a function. Beep. Wait, and then I believe this probably just needs to be imported. Sorry, go up here to quick fix, add import. So now we got that. We're going to delete this comment because you don't need to do that. And we're going to go here and do the, oh gosh, sorry guys. Sometimes it's hard to being a developer. Okay, and then we're going to autocomplete that because it suggested that. And there's no reason to retype it out if it's already typed in. So now that we've got that set up, when I click on each of these respective buttons, it should is the keyword there. It should take us to GitHub or Google to then sign in. So let's test it out now, and let's see what we've got going on here. Right, use Google first. Refresh. Okay, so something's going on. Let's look at our console, and it says not found error. Let's look at application. Oh, wait, sorry, no, network is what I wanted. Okay, so we can see we're getting a couple errors here, right? And it's trying to do API auth sign-in social, which is not the right. Well, it is the right one. It's saying it's not there, so API auth sign-in social. Model verification does not exist in the database. So see, we've got an error here that's saying that the model verification is not in the database. So something is messed up here because we do have the table there. Let's just refresh just to make sure. Okay, so that's good. So there's got to be, so the table is there. We're getting this error here. So what we need to do is we need to look at our configuration because somewhere it's not connecting to the database or something. So let's go back over to our auth file here. And let's see, we've got database, Prisma adapter, Prisma, PostgreSQL, database, we've got this, that's all good. That's just interacting with the database, auth client, localhost, create client, base URL, that all looks normal. Prisma, like this can talk to it. Client, let's make sure that our environment variables are set up correctly. Database URL, PostgreSQL, Sleeves portfolio, that's all correct. So let's think here, why would this be happening? So let's go ahead and copy this error. I come over here, I'm going to create a new chat. And we're going to change this to asks. I don't want to go coding a bunch. Clicked on the sign in button by Google and getting this error. The table is created, and I have verified that the table exists in the database. Why is this error happening? So let's put that in. It's going to go through and it's going to create a to-do list, which is awesome. So it knows, first step we're going to do here. So first, it's going to examine the Prisma schema, make sure it exists, check if the Prisma client has been generated, and it's analyzing all these things here. And it's saying it's found the issue, the verification model exists in your Prisma schema, and the Prisma client has been generated, but there's likely a migration synchronization problem. Here's what I discovered. The Prisma schema contains verification model lines 64 to 74. Generate client exists in generated Prisma with all necessary files. Database migration, only one migration exists. The error suggests that while the table exists in your database, as you confirmed, BetterAuth cannot find the verification model through the Prisma client. This typically happens when the migration didn't include the verification model, but it was, and database schema is out of sync with the current Prisma schema. You need to generate and apply a new migration to sync the database with the current. So I'm gonna follow what it's saying. I don't think this is right, but just to give you guys an example of how this works, I'm going to do this. Oh my gosh, let me just copy it this way. And we'll see what happens here. Already in sync, no schema. So I'm going to now copy this. Ran that command to confirm that this database is in sync with our schema file. Okay, so now I'm gonna put that in there. So I'm guessing, this is my initial guess, and probably should just try this and see if it fixes our issue, is the Prisma client is probably not up to date. Yeah, so it's telling us that now. So let me update that. And we're gonna run this. Good, now we're gonna npm run dev. And let's see if that resolved our issue. Go back over here, reload the page, which it's doing right now. Okay, and then we're gonna click on. I wanna be able to see just that, and this is a bunch of crap. So we're gonna click that to clear this out, and I'm gonna click continue with Google. There we go. I'm gonna select my name. Continue, and voila, it worked. So to confirm that it's working, one other thing that we're going to do is I'm going to grab in the index file here, I'm going to grab const session. Yep. We don't need this because remember I talked about like if I didn't export use session specifically, then we would have to do auth-client.use session. I just want to use session here. So we don't have to do that. Update that. And that's the wrong place. So let me just do that. Quick fix, add import from there. And then we're going to say if session.data. So basically what this is going to do is if I'm signed in, if there's data in the session, I'm going to show just Sleeves portfolio, and I'm going to show that I'm logged in with my email displayed. If not, then it's just going to go to this return statement here, and it's going to show the sign-in form. So if we go back, we can see that we're logged in as SleeveShirtholes. So if I go here now, I just want to also check. We're going to do API/auth, and I think it's sign out, maybe. No. Let's actually do this. Yeah, thank you. And then we need to get rid of this. It's not coming from the session. It's going to come from, oh my gosh, let's just add it up here. Please stop. Sometimes sign out. I don't know why that's, do not export that. Let's go look. Auth. Oh, no, that's not the one. Sorry. Yeah. Sign out. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Sometimes I have big hands, and so sometimes I accidentally click things I shouldn't or don't mean to click. Okay, so now we've added a sign out button because I also want to verify. So sign out. If I sign out, now we see the sign in page again. I want to try the GitHub, authorize SleeveShirtholes, being redirected. Beautiful. So let's go ahead. As the last step, we've got BetterAuth working. We're able to click on the buttons. We're able to sign in, sign out, all that good stuff. So that's all set up correctly. The last thing I just want to show you is what the tables look like when a sign in occurs. So let's look at this user table. We have, I'm just going to close this for a second. We have 2 rows so far. It's because I signed in with Google and GitHub, so my email addresses are different there. And so the first row, you can see my name, my email address. As I suspected earlier in the video, this automatically sets it to true because we're using SSO. This is my avatar image, which is optional. And then it shows you when it was created at and when it was updated at. And so those are the 2 tables there. Let's look and see what account looks like. We have 2 accounts. So basically what this allows you to do is it allows a user to have multiple ways to sign in. And so if you look here, we have a user ID column right here. And so a user could use GitHub, a social sign in as an option, as in GitHub, and they can also use like email and password if we enable that on the application, but in this case, we're not doing that. And then there's some additional information there, like the access token, the ID token, that's all used for BetterAuth to confirm and verify people are signed in. We have session here, so these are the sessions that are enabled. And so if I sign out, I think this actually gets deleted. And then verification, nothing in there because we're not using that table for anything right now. If we did email password, then we might want to send verification to have them click on to make sure that they're using their email, not somebody else's. And so that's what this table would be used for. So I just want to verify what I just said in regards to the session table. So I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to click sign out. I'm going to refresh this table. Session is gone. So this table just basically handles all the active sessions that are on the application at that point. All right, guys, we got BetterAuth set up with our application. There were a few bumps in the road, but we were able to get through those, get our authentication set up and set it up for Google and GitHub sign-in. We were able to verify, what's going on with the tables. So that was exciting. I'm really happy we got through that together. I appreciate you staying until the end of the video. If you like this content and if you like this series, please make sure you like and make sure you subscribe so you can see when the next video comes out. We're pretty much through the first setup phase, and now we're going to start actually building out some of the pages and seeing a lot of really good progress on the application now that we've got through some of the infrastructure stuff that we needed to set up with the application. So once again, thank you for watching the video. And if you haven't seen the first one, it's going to be somewhere on the screen here. So go ahead and click on that so that you can see the first video if you haven't already. But thank you once again, and I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you the next time.